Hello Sword Fam, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Brittany. I'd taken a little bit of a hiatus, so for those of you that noticed and have returned, thank you very much for your patience. I'd taken some time off from making videos because I just had a baby. And having a baby is a lot of work, but I've kind of gotten back into the swing of things, got a little bit of a schedule going and a routine. So for those of you that are new and those of you that are returning, thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy the video. In the time that I had off, I actually made some upgrades to my studio and to my setup. So one of the biggest things was this microphone. You might be able to see it. I don't know, it might be hard to actually see against my sweater. But it was a suggestion from my friend Skolagrim. I'd asked him what kind of microphone he was using for one of the videos, and he told me about this Rode 2 mic, and it's awesome. So hopefully the videos have a better audio quality than the previous ones that I've been doing. So thanks, Skull, really appreciate it. For today's video, we're going to be talking about HEMAbookshelf's Meyer Facsimile project, which I think is one of the coolest things that you can get. So we're gonna go through that and talk a little bit about it. Most folks in the sword community are familiar with this book. This is a translation of Joachim Meyer's 1570 Art of Combat, done by Dr. Geoffrey Formy, who has done a tremendous amount of translations and research for the sword community. And there are a number of books that are available from him. This is just one of them. But I do think that this happens to be one of the most well-known, probably the most purchased and the most recognizable books in the HEMA community, probably because of its accessibility and the fact that it was actually a very early translation. This was actually translated in 2006, and it has been reprinted multiple times, and this has sort of been the be-all, end-all for translations for Meyer. And I really hope with this video it doesn't come across that I'm saying that this is like a dead resource or anything like that, but having new translations for something that is, almost 2 decades old is really, really important for the progress and the research of the HEMA community. So while I do very, very much respect the work that Dr. Formy had done, and I have always valued this book, in fact, I have 3 copies, there is a new translation that was done as part of the bookshelf or HEMAbookshelf project. It was translated by Dr. Rebecca Garber. And again, having a new translation is really, really exciting in the community. And I wish people would do that a little bit more, because when you have one translation and it doesn't change for decades, there can be some things that are lost, or there's not a lot of room for new ideas. So having new translations is always very good from a research point of view. So this, again, not out with the old, in with the new, but more of keep the old and let's take a look at the new. But what I want to talk about today are these gorgeous gems. I am in love with these facsimiles. You guys might have seen one of my previous videos covering another HEMAbookshelf facsimile. I will link that in the description below. But for today, we're going to cover these ones. You may notice that I actually have 2 copies of this facsimile, whereas in fact one is actually in English and one is in German. I'm using the word facsimile a little bit liberally. These are not true facsimiles, but we'll go into that in a moment. What's really cool though is that they look identical, but one is in English, one is in German. And what I like about having that is when I open the German, I can sort of experience it from a historical or research perspective and be like, okay, this is what it would have looked like, and the language that's being used, the way that it's written, it's all true to form. However, now that I have an English version, I can almost like anachronistically or experimental archaeology sort of put myself into reading this as if I was somebody in that time period being able to look at the book and read it. Even though it wasn't actually in English at the time, I can have that experience as if I was somebody in 1570 handling this book, wanting to learn fencing and going, okay, I open it up, what do I see? How do the images make me feel? How does it seem to read the text and actually be able to dig into it as an actual document? And this makes these two as a pair extremely valuable, and I am really, really, really fortunate to have them in my library at my school. So what are we waiting for? Is the suspense killing you? Of course it is. Let's take a look at these books. So we have a leather-bound, absolutely beautifully tooled front and back. You can see the details on that. Really, really gorgeous. And of course, the spine with its risers and gold right in here. Absolutely beautiful. Red end papers. Now we'll just open it up. We can just ignore this. So I have this in my library at my sword school, and this is just a note to let students know they can't actually remove it from the studio. They can look at it all they want, but they can't actually leave the property with it, but also to just, keep their hands clean when they're handling it. So this has nothing to do with the book other than like my own personal edition, so whatever. Facsimiles try to reproduce historical documents as accurately as possible. So that's why you see things like discolored paper and all these little, what looks like handwritten notes. This is actually like part of the historical document. So as we go through this, you can see the library stamp here. So all of the painted images that we see in this facsimile are actually from the copy of Meyer's book that's held at the Leipzig University Library. You can actually see their stamp right here, which is kind of cool. The illustrations for Meyer's fencing manual were done by a very well-known master artist, Tobias Stimmer. I'm not going to go into too much detail about him in this video, so if you're interested in him and you're a bit of an art history nerd like me, give him a quick search. He did a lot of very notable things. This is not the first time that fencing manuals have had master artists illustrate them, but it is something to note that when you get a master artist involved in a project, it lends credibility to the book itself. So not only do you have a fencing master who's writing how to fence, but you're getting a master artist actually doing the illustrations. I'll give you a little bit of better look here. And you'll notice how much color there is. This isn't your typical medieval Hollywood brown, black, shades of gray, kind of drab. It's very colorful, very vibrant. You get yellows, oranges, you get greens and blues, purples. Here's an excellent example. This is like the entire rainbow. In terms of what colors you can see, it is absolutely stunning. So while this was written by Meyer and illustrated by Stimmer, it was actually printed by Thibault Berger, which is actually kind of neat too. Again, if you kind of want to look into that. I'm not going to go into too much of the history here because I don't want to end up making this like a 30-40 minute video. But interesting people to look into in their own right, and it does add a little bit more of a art historical context to this. So again, in true facsimile style, everything gets reproduced. You can see little ink smudges here, little stains and stuff. So these stains are not actually me mistreating my books or letting them get damaged. So I have not done this myself. These are actually just what's in the original copies. And so it's getting reproduced as part of the facsimile. I say copies because, as I'd mentioned, the images come from the copy at the Leipzig University Library, but this is actually a combination of other copies of Meyer's book that are still in existence. And it's meant to be like a compilation in a sense so that the reader, which is us, can get the fullest experience possible. This was an intentional choice made by HEMAbookshelf when they did this project. I think it's actually really valuable because it kind of makes a compilation in a way that adds a little bit more context. Also, in true facsimile style, the paper. HEMAbookshelf, all of their facsimiles, the attention to detail is so thoughtful. What they've done here is they've used cotton rag paper, and it produces a texture and a feel and a weight that is very similar to the pages or the paper that was used to print these books in 1570. As well, the HEMAbookshelf project had made a deliberate choice to change the weight of the paper through this facsimile. So not every single piece of paper is actually uniform in its weight. It is actually variable, much like it would have been in 1570. Look at that. That is gorgeous. So now again, we have this really stunning facsimile copy, and it includes everything. But as part of the project that was undertaken by HEMAbookshelf to create this, there is also the English version as well, which we'll take a look at now. I have the English version here. This is the Prestige edition of the English translation. Same kind of idea you have, except, I mean, it's in English, but you still have the gold lettering, the same details for the risers on the spine, that leather tooling. Again, this is supposed to be just an English version of the facsimile we just saw. So now you'll notice when we open it, it looks a little bit cleaner, right? Now we don't have all of those annotations that were on the side. We don't have, actually we're missing the library stamp, everything like that. You can see the way this was laid out. There's just the littlest remnants of the library stamp here. And here, I don't know if I can get a better, there we go. You can see just the edges of the library stamp that wasn't taken out of the original art, but these are little details. This isn't a complaint or criticism at all of HEMAbookshelf's endeavor here. It's just like, I notice these little details as an art historian and I think, oh, that's kind of neat. So now we have to keep in mind that this is meant to be an English version of the original. However, it's still its own like freestanding product. It's its own project. You can see here the year 2023, translated by Dr. Rebecca Garber. So these details are not going to be true to the first version, the facsimile in German that I showed you, but instead this is meant to be like its own new copy of the original book. So the art has remained the same, but it is a little bit more vibrant. It looks like it's been like restored in a way, sort of like, you know, those old films and then they get like a restored version on Blu-ray or whatever and just like the pictures are enhanced and that's about it. Very similar. The color on this is a lot more vibrant. It's a little bit more crisp. I'll give you a quick side-by-side of the same page with the German version and the English version. So you can see just the difference in the color here, right? And again, there's that library stamp, different years here, everything in comparison. So you'll notice as we go through this, again, the images have been enhanced. However, the text or the script style has remained the same. So it's, again, very much like a facsimile, but instead it's just like a modern English version. So it's been translated, maintains the same script style, and the same kind of formatting in the pages, which I really appreciate. Again, it's like I'm able to, as somebody who doesn't speak German, or even any old versions of German, I can experience the product as if I was reading the facsimile or the original document, but I'm able to experience it in my own native language. So really, I feel like I'm not missing out on anything as a native English speaker when I have something like this at my disposal. So now, instead of just flipping through the entire thing to let you see it, we're just going to go right to the very end. And at the very end, what I think is a nice addition is this afterword from the translator, which is not included in the original facsimile, obviously, but this adds a lot of context to the English version that we're reading. So this describes the translator's experience, but it also adds context such as why Indus, the word Indus, was not translated in this copy. and that's because Meyer ends up explaining what it means. So it'd be sort of redundant to like translate Indus in that way. But that's why, when you're going through this, if you get this copy, just read the afterword. It really helps to contextualize like the thought process behind why it was translated the way it was. So now we have two beautiful copies, one in German, one in English. And I think these are really beautiful and valuable resources, though they are a little bit expensive, which can make it cost prohibitive. However, fortunately, HEMAbookshelf has provided an English translation for a more affordable price in a paperback copy. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I really hope you've enjoyed the facsimile, because this is actually something that I really am passionate about, is getting involved in the source material, experiencing it in a variety of different ways. So hopefully I've sparked your interest. Thank you so much for returning to my YouTube channel. Looking forward to doing future videos, and thank you so much for your support.